So anyway, I was working within manufacturing, building a brand, expanding that brand, expanding our education footprint, our sales footprint, and moved on to another company, kind of doing the same thing when I feel like my life was disrupted. In April of 2016, my youngest child was murdered while he was at work. Um, and that just, again, is one of those you don't expect, you don't know, like
How old
how,
was he?
he was 23.
Oh, so young.
So young, yeah, and just on the precipice of life. He was getting ready to start law school that fall. He worked in a law firm, so just so unexpected. Like even the phone call was like completely surreal. A million people I could have thought of in my family, even maybe not a million, but a lot of people I could have thought of, even in my own immediate family, especially when considering someone was shot. That I would have thought, okay, that person, it made sense, but not my
Not
son.
your son.
No,
Is
not at
there
all.
a reason why he was shot?
Yeah,
The
so he was
the
actually
person
let
like had something against him. What happened?
it's something that I think I've come to realize about murder, right? And taking someone else's life. There's never a reason. You know what I mean? It's stupid. It's
I
always
agree.
something so
Yeah.
stupid. And in this case, I mean, it can boil it down to a parking spot, and not a parking spot that my son was even in. So he was working in a criminal defense firm. It was a criminal defendant who had hired the firm previously. He was upset about a parking spot outside of his business and a dispute with a neighbor over who could or shouldn't park there. Um, he began texting or calling the attorney that day with like pictures of a car parked in a spot. And again, this is a criminal defense attorney, and he's in court that day. So he's getting pictures of like a no parking zone, thinking, what do you want? And so he maybe says some text back to the guy, like, I'm at court. You could talk to Chase being my son. And anyway, it escalated. It started about 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 2 or 3, he had definitely made several threats to his children's mother that he was going to the attorney's office. He was going to shoot his attorney in the head. And he did. He just showed up there.
Wow.
Chase was alone in the office, and he shot him 8 times.
Was this guy mentally ill or something?
Oh, looking at,
That's
I'll just be
crazy.
brutally honest. Looking at his criminal record leading up to that, he was escalating. He was
Okay.
just an escalating individual. And actually, he had everything in life going for him. Really did. He'd been adopted into a really good family, young. He'd been raised in upper middle class Midwest in Minnesota. His child's mother that he was involved with, he had 3 children, he was 34 years old at the time. They had a good life. She worked at 3M in middle management executive position, had home, did well enough to support him in an outside apartment that he lived in, had a mistress, just like he just wanted to not be good in life. And one of his crimes previously he'd been involved in a drive-by of a house. So he was escalating. Before shooting my son, the same gun that was involved, he'd been in an alley maybe a couple weeks before as a convicted felon, shouldn't have had a firearm, shooting. So, I mean, to me, it was just like I looked at his record and I thought, you just don't want to participate in life, you just don't.
Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you for sharing that. Must
Yeah.
be not easy for you to share that.
No, but that's actually the pivotal point, right, in the change, because then I felt like I can't travel anymore. It was really hard. And it also really made me stop. Like all the things that I'm sharing with you that I was so proud of were also pieces that really helped me to keep my past very much away from me. That I felt responsible for abuse in my life. I felt responsible that, I grew up in a home that was drug addicted. I would look at my mother and be like, well, that's my fault, or that it was a reflection on me. I didn't want people to know she'd been in jail. It felt like you would judge me. So that happening, I don't know, it just, you look at everybody different, right? And I just started to realize, well, we all bleed the same, right? We're all the same. It didn't matter. Nothing else mattered. And I realized how separated I was from everybody in my own life, like my children even though, yes, I had been there and I had provided these things that maybe I thought I wouldn't have been able to, I didn't provide a lot of me personally, you know?
Being there, right? Because
Yeah,
you're away traveling.
exactly, always traveling, but not just the physically being there. I felt if I really was honest with myself that a lot of my relationships were superficial. You know, that you knew a little bit of me, very surface of me.
Don't you think it's because of your childhood? Usually, when you grew up with when you grow up with an abusive home, it's hard for you to make connections because you, as a kid, didn't have the protection and the love to make you secure, so you don't trust people, and you
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like they're gonna hurt me. So I can't get too attached. I can't get too close, otherwise they're gonna hurt me, because that's what you learn as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that bled into everything. I mean, even my relationships with my own children. So
Yeah.
it made me stop, take a look, and to just really commit to some serious change. And part of that was not wanting to travel anymore. And it wasn't that I don't want to work or I wanted to give up on life. I just didn't want to be away. You know, I realized, wow, I just let all this, I just wasn't involved. And so I want to be involved. So I'm like, I'm going to start a business.
Out of nowhere?
Out of nowhere. And never had a dream. I mean, you know, I think maybe somewhere inside of all of us, there's this little, especially when you do, my role really was to be in front of entrepreneurs and business owners. So there was always that kind of little, man, he can do that.
I
And
can do it too.
yeah. And I would always ask things like, what's the square footage here? And what's the price per square foot? And, you know, I was always wondering, like, how they can do that and, you know, and make it work. But I was used to my corporate salary, right? And my corporate benefits and that security. And that is probably another thing that I wasn't always used to, too, especially during childhood. So those things mattered to me. Financial security really mattered to me. But without a plan, and really without knowing people, because again, I'd traveled so much, even though I'd lived, at that point, I'd been living in Florida for 5, maybe 6 years, but no real connections here because I was never here. I typically would leave on a Sunday or a Monday almost every week, and I would come home Thursday or Friday if I was only traveling for a week. I mean, sometimes it'd be weeks at a time that I'd be gone. So no connections, no plan, no savings. And I'm like, I'm going to start a business.